So I can confirm that I have just received the resignation of the Chairman of the Council. Councillor Brian Williams, Vice Chairman, will therefore now take the chair.
Procedure. As Vice Chairman, I start by welcoming you to the meeting. I am obliged to inform you that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to view the meeting using the link on the agenda. There are no planned fire alarms tests this morning. If there's an alarm, please either exit via the stairs to the main entrance, or if you are closer to the back of the room, use the fire exit stairs at the rear of the chamber. For the benefit of those watching on live stream, please all of you use your microphones every time you speak, including when participating in a recorded vote. If you do not use your microphone, those watching the meeting remotely will not hear your voice. You may find it easier to be seated while using your microphone. Now, I'm obliged to tell you that the chairman for the last municipal year has resigned, and therefore we have to elect a chairman for this coming municipal year. And I wish to propose Councillor Vince Hunt as chairman for this municipal year 2024-25. Is that seconded?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, I'm happy to second that.
So we have a nomination proposed and seconded. Are there any other nominations? Roger. Councillor Evans.
Thank you. I propose Nigel Hartin.
Nigel Hartin is proposed. Is Nigel Hartin seconded? Nigel Hartin is seconded. Are there any further nominations? No, there appear to be no further nominations. We shall therefore have an election for the position of chairman. And this must be put to a vote, obviously. The vote will be taken by a show of hands. Please raise your hand and allow sufficient time for officers to count the vote. Right. I ask for votes for Councillor Vince Hunt. All those in favour of Councillor Vince Hunt as chairman, please raise your hands. Those against Councillor Vince Hunt? Any abstentions? I see one abstention.
I've got 38 for Vince, 25 for Nigel.
There were 38 members voted for Councillor Vince Hunt, and 25 were against Councillor Vince Hunt. Councillor Vince Hunt, therefore, has the confidence of the Council, the majority of the Council, wishing him to be chairman, and I therefore declare him elected as chairman of this council for the coming municipal year. Councillor Vince Hunt.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Declaration. I may need to borrow your pen. I left mine here, but it's gone.
Roll the cancer manufacturer. Put that one instead.
Where is mine? That illegal team, they're nicking my pen now. Okay, thank you, councillors. Dear Lord, we ask for your guidance and wisdom as we gather for this council meeting. We pray that you will give us clarity of thought and unity of purpose as we discuss the important matters before us. We humbly ask that you would guide and direct us in all that we do. Amen. As I've already said, welcome. It's especially important for those who are listening remotely that you mute any devices and switch your microphone off after you've used it. You may find it easier, well, it's already been said by Brian, so I won't say it again. But please, as you know, it's one of my pet hates when news reports come through and computers are binging and bonging and making a cacophony of different noises. So if we could make sure they are on mute, that would be very much appreciated. We will look to be done hopefully by midday, but if not, depending on where we are on the agenda, we will take a short break, probably around 12:15, 12:30, but as I say, it's hopefully relatively straightforward today, so we will crack on. So, item 2 is apologies. Chief Executive.
Apologies have been received from the following councillors: Dean Carroll, Simon Harris, Cecilia Motley, Viv Parry, John Price, Colin Taylor, Ed Towers, Tracy Huffer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to item 3, which is the election of the Vice Chair. I take it you've had the Vice Chair's resignation. You have. So I'm going to call for nominations for the election of Vice Chair of the Council to serve until the annual meeting scheduled to be held on Thursday, 22nd of May 2025. Each nomination will need to be proposed and seconded. I, for my part, am going to propose Councillor Brian Williams. Is that seconded?
Councillor Ian Nellens, I'll second Councillor Brian Williams.
Roger.
Nominate Nigel Harding.
And is that seconded by? Okay, that has been seconded. So, as Councillor Williams was proposed first, we will go to a vote. Again, please leave your hands up for long enough for officers to count. All those in favour of Councillor Brian Williams, please show. And those against, please show. We will make sure we do it absolutely by the book.
37 for Brian and 24 for Nigel.
Okay, so that's 37 for and 24 against. So Councillor Brian Williams will serve for next year as the Vice Chair.
Signing the declaration of acceptance of office.
Brian, would you like to become? Are you going to invest, Brian, or should he invest himself?
Just signed it.
Right.
I'll allow you to do it formally, Chairman.
Oh.
Pop it straight over.
Yeah. There we go. I'll even square it up for you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much indeed. I thank the Council. I thank the Council for its support for me for this final year of the four-year term before we come to the elections. I had the interesting thought that if Nigel, my long-standing colleague, friend in opposition, had been elected to this position, I should have had to spend this meeting sitting in the middle of the opposition, because I was had to take his seat. But fortunately, I have retained the confidence of the Council, for which I thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to item 4, which is disclosable interests. I would remind members to disclose any pecuniary or other registrable or non-registrable interest in any matter to be discussed, including the interest in their register of interests, and leave the chamber prior to the matter being discussed. So, looking around the room, I see no hands. Item 5 then, we will move on to the minutes. I'm going to move that the minutes of the previous council meeting held on the 21st of March 2024, as circulated with the agenda papers, be signed as a correct record.
As is the custom, I second those minutes.
Good. I'm assuming, as I see no hands, that everybody is content that they are a correct record. Does anybody wish to abstain from that because they were not at that meeting? Mike Isherwood, Ted Clark and Robert Tyndall. Yes, that's why you're abstaining. I think so. Right. No, you are. Thank you. Okay. We will move on to item 6, which are the announcements to receive such communications as the Chair, Vice Chair and Head of Paid Service may desire to lay before the Council. 4.1 is the Chairs and Vice Chairs engagements, which you will have all seen. We will move on, therefore, to item 7. And in accordance with Procedure Rule 14, we will now deal with questions from members of the public in accordance with the new procedure, with the revised procedure rules. They're not really new anymore. The Assistant Director of Legal and Democratic Services will read out the public question received from members of the public who are not present. The relevant portfolio holder will respond to those questions. Tim, I think you're doing all of them, aren't you?
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's going to be like War and Peace. Tim.
Thank you. The first question is from Adam Fager. As a Monkmoor resident, I reported over 5 months ago a number of potholes that needed repair on Fix My Street. Since receiving acknowledgements for my complaints, I cannot see any update. As far as I am aware, There has been no assessment of the problem, nor any report or when the potholes will be fixed. And I am not the only resident who has made a complaint. Other residents tell me that they have complained about potholes without any response. When will the potholes in Monkmoor be repaired, particularly those on Crowmere Road?
Thank you. Portfolio holder, Dan.
Thank you, Adam, for your question. The Highway Service, like all other council departments, has to operate within the available budgets. The very wet and prolonged winter period has stretched resources and impacted on our productivity, so the rate and speed of repair since the start of 2024 has reduced. Although this is a frustration for the service, it is a reality and is replicated right across the country. It should be noted that in 2023, the Highway Service increased the number of potholes repairs carried out by 46% on the previous year. This was done at no additional cost due to service efficiencies and our new mixed economy operating model. We are working hard to reduce the backlog of repairs as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Tim, I believe there's a question from Terry Trickett.
Yep, thank you. The SAMDEV adopted plan recognises that, the development of the Basin Hill village is constrained by the presence of the A49 running through the village and the major quarry to the east. On the 18th of November 2021, there was the following quote from a cabinet member in the Ludlow Advertiser. Councillor Dean Carroll said there was a desperate need to cut the number of accidents on the A49 between Shrewsbury and the Herefordshire border south of Ludlow, which has been branded one of the most dangerous roads in England. Over 100 Basin Hill residents objected to, and Shropshire Council itself refused, a planning application for Greenbelt agricultural land to the west of Lith Hill Road in 2017. On several grounds, including that such development would also result in the loss of higher quality agricultural land, contrary to the National Planning Policy Framework. A further planning application was withdrawn following large numbers of objections. Residents from the Huntons have expressed serious concern regarding flooding. Their report can be found on the planning portal under comments in the most recent application. Can Shropshire Council please explain why the same land, Bay 039 Emerging Shropshire Local Plan, has now been identified for 100 dwellings? I believe that Basin Hill villagers deserve a full explanation as to how circumstances have changed so considerably that this could now be conceived to be sustainable development, contrary to previous planning decisions and the wishes of so many local residents and the Basin Hill Parish Council.
Thank you. And I believe the portfolio holder, Councillor Chris Schofield, who has Planning and Regulatory Services, is going to provide the answer. Councillor Schofield.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank Terry Trickett for the question. One of the key objectives of the local plan review, currently examination, is to identify sufficient sustainable land to accommodate Shropshire's housing requirements to 2038. When adopted, this would replace the majority of the current development plan for the area, which includes the SAMDEV plan. The 2017 application referred to in the question on the Lith Hill Road site in Basin Hill was refused on the grounds it was in an area designated as countryside against the SAMDEV plan, and therefore there is a presumption against development. However, contrary to the implication in the question, the site is not located in the Green Belt. In the emerging local plan, it is proposed that this site is allocated for residential development and thus to be incorporated into the development boundary of Basin Hill. Doing this would remove the site from its current countryside location in policy grounds. The proposal to do this has been subject to significant site assessment and public consultation. The Council is aware of the current planning application on the Lith Hill Road site and will be determining this application in due course with reference to both the current development plan for the area, which includes a SAMDEV plan,
as well as any other material considerations.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. And the next question is from Victoria Moore. Tim.
The respected Environmental Science Journal of the Royal Society of Chemistry confirmed in January 2023 that 80% of England's drains are at or beyond capacity, with consequent leaks, flooding and pollution of our streams and rivers. In 2020, Shropshire Water Cycle report confirmed that Shrewsbury and Shropshire's drains are beyond capacity, needing urgent repair, updating, replacement. Since they were constructed, the Sweet Lake Meadow and Ockley Road developments have had recurrent issues with blocked and leaking drains demonstrated recently by human excrement flowing onto residents' porches, gardens and out of sinks and toilets, which is both repulsive and a public health hazard. Worse still, Shropshire Council, builders S.J. Roberts, Taylor Wimpey, McPhillips, Severn Trent Water and the Environment Agency have been playing pass the poo parcel, with no one accepting responsibility for dealing with the issues and blaming residents for putting non-degradable items into sinks and toilets. I am reminded of the Fujitsu Horizon Post Office attempts to avoid responsibility for their failures by blaming others. Will Shropshire Council now take responsibility and show leadership by commissioning a further urgent report of Shrewsbury's water supply, drains, systems and watercourses, along with its partners, including Severn Trent Water, Shropshire Wildlife Trust, Shrewsbury Fisheries, the Environment Agency and Shropshire's Director of Public Health, to establish the causes and extent of the current issues and the required remedies, with a commitment to urgently implement recommendations. After all, Shropshire Council granted planning consent for all these developments in full knowledge of the lack of capacity of existing drains.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Schofield, I believe, will provide the answer again.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Victoria Moore, for the question. Shropshire Council would not normally get involved in matters relating to the adoption of foul sewers on new developments. It would be up to the developer to construct these to an adoptable standard in line with the approved drainage layouts, which would then be inspected and adopted by Severn Trent Water. You refer to a specific development by Taylor Wimpey. We are aware that Severn Trent Water are working with Taylor Wimpey to ensure these issues are resolved as soon as possible. Clearly, it's in Taylor Wimpey's interest to get this resolved, otherwise the sewers won't be adopted. That being said, Shropshire Council's flood risk and drainage manager will continue to raise the residents' concerns with Severn Trent Water. With regard to the planning application process, Severn Trent Water are consulted on these developments and are the technical experts on drainage matters. Their comments are fully taken into account when determining the applications. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And finally, a question from Spencer Edwards. Tim.
Thank you. It is a statutory duty to provide household recycling centres. The legislation does not specify how many need to be provided, leaving it up to the authority to decide, but does it mention accessibility? How can I access the ones in Shropshire, taking Shrewsbury as an example, if I do not have a car? I have been informed by Shropshire Council that it is not possible to walk or cycle into these facilities. Since around 18% of Shropshire households and many more individuals do not have a car or a van, what can be done to rectify this so that all council taxpayers can use the service they already pay for?
Thank you.
Yeah, is that? Do you hear me now? Thank you for your question, Spencer. In practice, 99.99% of customers come to household recycling centre sites in a car or van as they are carrying an amount of material which warrants such mode of transport. If someone appears on a bicycle or on foot, the site operatives will engage with them and usually allow them to tip their waste materials. However, at busy times, whilst there are queues, some users are tempted to exit their vehicles and start to offload by walking their waste into the site rather than wait their turn to access the site. This can quickly lead to chaos from parked cars still in the queue and raise tempers from other users who are correctly waiting in the queue. For this reason, we do not advertise access to pedestrians, as we do not want to give the queue jumpers any encouragement or reason to try to justify their actions. The proposed introduction of a booking system, if adopted, will remove the issue, as there will not be the queues as any user would need to book a slot. This would allow access to all users, whether carrying a car, arriving in a car, van, or on bike or foot. Alternatively, people could share a ride to the household recycling centres with a neighbour or friend. We also provide a bulky household waste collection service at a very reasonable charge for those residents unable to take their items. Details of the bulky waste item collection service can be found on our website, along with information on the alternatives to disposal, such as donating or the reuse of schemes, or offering items via free cycle and similar schemes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're now signatures and has been received from Tracy Cansdale requesting a debate under the Council's petition scheme. The petition states that we understand the demand for formal consultation on the decision to close the school library service, plus a commitment to rapidly explore and report on options to rehouse the existing library and maintain the service in some form within a month before actions are taken to close it off. I'm now going to ask the petitioner to present, please. You are allowed up to 5 minutes to outline your case, after which there will be a debate of 15 minutes. At the end of that 15 minutes, I will bring Kirsty Hurst-Knight, the portfolio holder, in, who will inform her decision based on the debate that she hears. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Books make a difference. Developing a child's joy and delight in reading needs good quality text. If a child loves reading, then that is the biggest indicator that they will do well in their GCSEs, far more important than social class, economics, or any other factor. The school library service is an underappreciated jewel and resource at Shirehall. Have you all popped in next door and seen the treasure trove of fiction, non-fiction, story sacks, artefact boxes, dyslexia-friendly books that schools across the county and beyond use? I'm a local head teacher. I had my service level agreement emailed to me last night for the summer and autumn terms. For £883, I can borrow 10 boxes with 75 non-fiction books in each of them, 10 boxes with 40 fiction books in them, 14 group reading sets and 2 artefact boxes. That's a total of 1,654 books. If I was using my £883 to buy books, say half non-fiction, half fiction, I would be able to buy 42 non-fiction books and 76 fiction books, 119 in total. So if the school library service continues to exist, my school gets 1,654 books over the next 2 terms. If it doesn't, we can buy 119 books. What difference will that make to the children in my school's educational achievements? If the school library service were to close now, which I know is being postponed, or later on after measures have been considered, it would be a cost-saving measure, but a short-term cost-saving measure, because it would embed educational disadvantage and it would impact our children who are our future for potential economic growth. I hope that everyone considering this decision has asked for the public sector equality duty assessment or considered the environmental impact. There are green reasons why sharing books and resources is much better for our move to carbon zero than each school replicating resources. Many head teachers feel the current stakeholder consultation is flawed. There are barriers to the public participating. Why are they asked to identify a school they are connected with? Council taxpayers should be able to comment on this matter without identifying with a school. Good literacy levels in our community are rightly the concern of all. School governors have a huge wealth of knowledge and expertise, and yet they are not a connected category for the stakeholder survey. The petition shows that there is a clear public will for the council to be subsidising this service in the medium term until enough time is given for more marketing, sponsorship and income generation. The resounding message of the 4,300 signatures of the petition is that council taxpayers are aghast at the thought of it being lost. I close with some words from the Children's Laureate, Joseph Coelho, who wrote a poem this week to celebrate Queen Camilla, who's not only a supporter of Shrewsbury, but of children's literature and access to libraries. Here is an extract from 1,000 libraries. But what of those schools where no library pulses its power? What happens to those students with no books to pass the hours? With no poets to please them, no illustrators inking unknown lands, no facts being savoured, no stories held in eager hands. What happens to the pupil without the sanctuary of stories? What happens in a world where only some read of glory? What happens when words can't be trusted, when knowledge comes at a price? What happens to humanity when truth is a game of dice? These fears are the ogres, the wicked witch, and the voice in the dark. Each library defeats these villains. Each library thickens our bark. Each library lengthens our roots. 1,000 libraries sprout 10,000 brand new shoots. So let's celebrate our libraries and use them all we can. Let's borrow all the books. Let's explore with ink-stained hands. Here's to 1,000 libraries and thousands more to come. Let reading be our medicine. Let libraries be our sun. Thank you.
Thank you very much and very excellently well timed. Okay. We are now in the 15 minutes debate time, as I said, which will inform the decision that the portfolio holder makes. I do already have a number of councillors here. I've got Councillor Mark Williams, Councillor Claire Wild, Councillor Caroline Bagnall, Councillor Julia Buckley and Councillor Bernie Bentinck. I will add names, but with 15 minutes for this debate, you may well not be called upon. So keep your hands up, though, because I'm talking and not writing shorthand. Okay, thank you. So, Mark Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add the fact that it is not just the 4,300 signatories they have so far, but there is also all the children who don't get to put their names on petitions, unless, of course, they go to Highley Primary School, and I have all their signatures here from the actual children themselves, and I'm sure that the vast majority of children within this county will really miss a library service if it disappears.
Thank you. Councillor Claire Wild.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, thank you, Tracy. Cressage is actually in my patch, so thank you very much for initially bringing that to my attention. There won't be a member in this room who was aware that a decision had been made to cease the school library service before the letter had been sent to the affected schools. For those who attended Cabinet in April, the response from the portfolio holder was clear. This decision, like many others, should have been made via the usual process, consultation with those affected, and then a report to Cabinet. I've subsequently had a look into all this, and my understanding is that actually the school's library service covers 5 local authority areas. So that's Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin, Powys, Worcester and Stafford. And I'd actually like to know what's been happening, what discussions have been taking place with these other authorities, because quite clearly it's an external service, and I don't think that has been made particularly clear to date. And I'd also like to say that the service, as far as I've been told anyway, is a very valued service, and actually the boxes and the artefacts are taken twice a term to the schools. And personally, I've had over probably about 300 emails, and I've had lots of different offers from different people, which hopefully will be taken on board when the consultation's done. So to reiterate, what the petition is asking for is a formal consultation on the decision to close the school library service, plus a commitment to rapidly explore and report on options to rehouse the existing library service and maintain the service in some form within a month and before any actions are taken to close it, which I believe is happening. I don't know all the details, but I will certainly hope the portfolio holder will elaborate and also expand on exactly what schools have been asked. So are all the schools in all the other authorities been asked, as well as the local authorities been asked, as to what they're actually doing? I'm really disappointed that this situation has occurred and that the correct process was not followed. However, I am grateful to the leader and the cabinet who've put in place changes to internal processes which will prevent this from happening again. And I look forward to having the answers to some of my questions from the portfolio holder at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to move to Caroline Bagnall first, but just before you start, all be aware that that's the 15-minute debate clock. We are individually timing members who have up to 5 minutes. Obviously, if you take it, there will be less people who can express to or chip into the debate. So, Caroline Bagnall, I will add an extra minute for that bit of diatribe. So,
okay, thank you. I was a primary school teacher for 25 years, 23 of them in Shropshire. And I have seen firsthand the enthusiasm and excitement in a group of children when the school's library service box arrives. Any school having to provide textbooks to cover every unit of history, for instance, or geography, or any other topics that they're studying, it would cost an enormous amount of money for them to do that. And when the curriculum changes, then they'd have to invest that money all over again. If we can embed a love of reading in young children, they have that for life. Not just for education, but for pleasure. It enriches lives. To have a regularly changing set of books in the classroom keeps that enthusiasm going. A lot of children don't have access to books at home. It may sound ridiculous in this day and age, but it's true. I used to give every child in my class a book for Christmas because many of them simply didn't own a book. The school's library service is hugely important, and for the saving of what is a relatively small amount of money, I think it is a dreadful, dreadful loss to the education of our children in Shropshire. And I urge people to stand up against this and for minds to be changed and the school library service to be saved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Julia Buckley.
Thank you, and thank you to the petitioner for all her hard work in collecting those signatures and bringing it to our attention so that we have the opportunity today to discuss this issue. For once, please enjoy this moment. I'm going to momentarily agree with Claire Wilde. That I'm sure most of us have all received emails, phone calls, messages, letters from people in each of our divisions about their concern about this cut. And those of you like me who are school governors, you'll have also heard it from your schools. So we have to think about the impact in our divisions and in our local authority. So while it's interesting to understand that wider context across the 5 local authorities, We are Shropshire Council and we take responsibility for our county, for our schools and for our children. So quite frankly, I don't care what the other four authorities do. We can ask our leaders to try and influence them. But today we have the choice to decide what we do. With or without the other four authorities, we can continue to support this service for our schools. And if actually this had been managed differently over the preceding years, if there had been an inflationary, index-linked, gradual increase in charge, we might not find ourselves with a 30,000 deficit on this project, and it needs to be looked at and managed in a different way. £30,000 saving. We all know the scale of the challenge that this authority faces. £51 million last year, £62 million overspent this year, and we are, as you know, on the brink of an absolute precipice. Will we be able to keep this council away from a Section 114? That's a huge saving to make. A false economy of 30,000 affecting generation after generation of our young people is not going to change the £62 million. And if it were, then would we not look at all the other decisions that you have made? £6.2 million to consultants like PricewaterhouseCoopers, millions of pounds on nice-to-have projects which are not statutory. Today's decision is about a very small amount of money and a very large number of children. So think about your emails, think about your schools. Don't worry about Staffordshire, worry about Shropshire. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burley-Bentinck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Tracy, for your very eloquent description of the importance of the school library service to children in Shropshire. I know that every one of the councillors in this room today has been contacted by Tracy. Such is the importance of this issue. And quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, Shropshire's children deserve better. And so if the portfolio holder won't today commit to continuing the school library service in some form in perpetuity, ensuring access of both the stored and the resources that are going to be coming into the school library service, I would like to propose a motion today to ensure that that Shropshire Council continues the school library service in perpetuity in some form, and also the current stored books and other resources, and the ability of schools to access these. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Julian Dean.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely support the aims of this petition, but I want to draw the wider lessons that I think that every member of the Cabinet needs to take seriously. There's a real risk that as we go through this year, we're going to see more and more incidents of effectively shooting first and asking questions later. I know of incidents of that happening in my area on a completely different issue, which I won't raise at this point, but I just think that, we have to put a stop to that here and now. We heard that was the situation, that was acknowledged by Cabinet. We cannot see that continuing. If there's going to be consultation on these issues, it has to be before major announcements are made. We have to look for alternatives. We have to look for ways to work with, as we're going to say later on, towns and parishes, with other organisations, with the education sector, whoever it may be. But we have to, right now, see an end to a policy of shooting first and asking questions later.
Thank you. Councillor Heather Kidd.
Thank you. As you will know, I've raised this before, and I'm actually Vice Chair of Governors at a federation of 3 schools. We actually are in a fortunate position in that we do have a little money in hand. If this came to the end of the road, it would use that money, which means we don't have that for future events. Many schools have no buffer left in their budgets, none at all. And actually they're quite close to not being able to set legal budgets for next year. The portfolio holder did say at Cabinet that at least she didn't know about this, and that is shocking in its own right, because a political the political ramifications from something like this should always have gone through a portfolio holder. So I'm glad that lessons are going to be learnt, and I'm glad things are going to be put in place so that this doesn't happen again. The late notice of SLAs not being renewed does not allow any school to prepare for this. That should never happen again. So there's a lack of money, a lack of storage for much of this stuff in many schools, because it is the artefacts that come with the library that are important. But actually, as has been said various places before, it's the variety and the renewal that actually most schools can't afford to do. So for the very little amount of money this is actually costing us, this is a very, very poor step. And my 3 federation schools will be sorely hit, despite the fact that we can afford a little more. We can't afford to do what we have to do for the national curriculum requirements, which is actually to change the books for 2 key stages every half term for 3 terms. It's a lot of books and a lot of artefacts. The ramifications of this are huge. Please reconsider.
Councillor Nick Bardsley. There are 2 minutes and 12 seconds remaining. So
Thank you, Chairman. I shall be as quick as I can. We've had a lot of doom and gloom. I was lucky enough to be invited to Bookfest at the end of last month in Theatre 7. I'm not sure whether any other Shropshire councillors were invited. I looked around and I didn't see anybody else. All I can say is that there was enormous enthusiasm for books and for reading, and indeed very widespread enthusiasm expressed by the large numbers of children who were present in Theatre 7 at the time. I don't think, I might have missed it, but I don't think any mention was made of the school library service. So I think it's important that we keep this in context. Reading is alive and doing really well in Shropshire. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And Leslie Picton, you've got 1 minute and 6 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't take very long. I just suppose I want to just add a note of caution to this, really, because I think there's probably not a member in this room who doesn't appreciate what this service offers. But when you add up lots of £30,000, they become very difficult. And I just wanted to say to members of the public that are listening that this is very indicative of those difficult decisions that this council is having to make. And this will not be the last one. The other thing I just wanted to point out is perhaps we should ask ourselves why now Shropshire Library Service is offering this service to Worcester, to Staffordshire, to Telford and Wrekin and to Powys. From what I understand, the reason is because those councils no longer offer their service. And there's a reason for that, and that's because the service is not statutory, and when times are tough, tough decisions have to be made. Having said all that, I totally agree with Councillor Julian Dean. You can mark that one up as well, because we should never have been in this situation. It should have been consultation first, followed by a report, not a letter to the school. And I do apologise, Tracy, and thank you for contacting Claire, because otherwise I would not have known about it.
Thank you. Right, that is the end of the 15 minutes. So I'm now going to bring in the portfolio holder, who has a list of options that she is able to take. I will just cover the bit on the proposed motion. You cannot have a motion to a petition. If you wish to put a motion forward, it would need notice, and the notice of motion would then have to go to the next council. So we will now listen to what the portfolio holder has to say. We will then vote on the recommendation that has been made. Kirsty.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question and the petition and the information that you've sent. And thank you with the heads that have been in touch with me and lengthy conversations that we've had to find a solution. I'll just go through a few points first before I come to my recommendation. Flawed consultation process, just to reassure people listening in, it's very thoroughly a process that we work with our legal and democratic team. So no, I don't believe that is flawed, but There you go. Mark Williams, thank you for your comment, sorry. I hope that you've encouraged the children to feed this through to the school survey. Yes, thank you. It's just an understanding that 65% of our schools use it, 35 don't. So talking about the survey, we've contacted all schools that use this service, and we're trying to gather what, so we can understand the value of the service for the schools that do, but also why schools aren't using the service, which is equally as important when we're looking at resolutions moving forward. Claire Wild, sorry, Councillor Wild, yes, the other authorities as the leaders listed, and I will sort of bring in Councillor Buckley's comment. Yes, we care about Shropshire, but if it's going to be a funded service that is to continue, we also need to spread this service out and look at the options with our neighbours. We have extended the consultation out to all of the schools in the neighbouring authorities that use this service to again capture their thoughts. Other things that we're looking at is the frequency. We're looking at the offer, how this can be improved, simplified as well. Schools have initially said that it can be quite complex. There's lots of things on offer there. So that's one thing we're looking at, locality. And the accommodation. We've had offers from other schools to look at where we hold this service. So there's lengthy discussions going on, and you have my assurance that these are continuing. Councillor Dean, again, I'd like to assure you that, you know, as soon as I knew of this situation, we instructed officers to return to the beginning of the process and enter into a formal consultation with schools and ascertain a way forward with the deficit. It's not just the deficit of 30k, it's the cost of a whole service. And last year alone, we saw an 11% decrease in use of the service. Just to clear things up, that it's a service level agreement that we have extended till December, because we will look at all the information that will come through the consultation, school surveys, and as I've said, ongoing conversations. That will be brought back to Cabinet for a report back to Cabinet in September. So we've got time over the summer holidays. We extended the consultation period to allow for school holidays as well. So we're doing all we can to work with schools to look at this service. To be clear, schools use the service to supplement their own stock of books and resources. Schools receive funding through central government grants to ensure children and young people have access to books and other suitable educational materials and to support the curriculum. We understand that this is a contentious issue, but to be shouted at, quite frankly, by councillors across the room, they really don't know me, they don't know my background, and they don't know how I support education. Come and watch me, look at how I work on Schools Forum, admissions, send. You'll see we have become a cabinet that work with schools. We don't do to schools. We are doing all we can, and you have my assurance on that. So for today, my recommendation will be that we take no action for reasons that I've just outlined. We await the full consultation, and I urge everybody to get involved on our Get Involved page. Go to the consultation, go through it to schools. We've had a really good initial response. There are more to come in. Keep filling out the survey, tell us your thoughts, and conversations around the service will continue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation for the what the portfolio holder has said that for today is recommending no action. We will take a vote on that. As you've heard, the consultation hasn't yet finished, and there is a lot of information still to come on this, and it is going to Cabinet in September. So, all those in favour of the...
Chairman, can I ask for a named vote, please? A recorded vote?
Yes, you can. Is that supported? I'm sure it is.
Yes.
I'm sure everybody will stand up. So, yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So, it will be
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Would you mind repeating the proposal again? It was quite difficult to
no action.
follow.
No action.
Zero action on this petition.
Well, the consultation's not finished yet, so I think the portfolio holder is struggling to find any action to take because it hasn't been informed by the consultation.
Well,
However,
sorry. Are you deferring the proposal so that after the consultation has been taken, we can...
it's going, if you listened, Julia, you would know that it was going to Cabinet in September, and it wasn't me that said that, it was the portfolio holder.
But when will it, so when
Julia,
will, can I
thank
just,
you. No,
point of order
no,
clarity of process.
no, Julia.
Will it come back to full council, yes or no? I don't understand what's happening.
Julia,
I'm asking for clarity.
if I stand up, it means you have to be quiet. Thank you. I did ask you to be quiet. We have a decision by the portfolio holder at this present moment in time to take no action. It is coming to Cabinet in September. So, we've been asked for a recorded vote. Chief Executive.
Roy Allcroft.
For.
Jeff Anderson.
For.
Caroline Bagnall.
Against.
Nicholas Bardsley. Joyce Barrow.
For.
Bernie Bentinck.
Against.
Thomas Biggins. Edward Bird.
For.
Andy Boddington.
Against.
Peter Broomhall. Julia Buckley.
Against.
Gary Birchett.
For.
Gwilym Butler. Steve Charmley. Ted Clark.
Against.
Rachel Connolly.
Against.
Gerald Dakin.
For.
Rosemary Dartnell.
Against.
Steve Davenport. Mary Davies.
Against.
Julian Dean.
Against.
Jeff Elner.
For.
David Evans.
For.
Julia Evans.
Against.
Roger Evans.
Against.
Paul Gill.
For.
Rob Gittins.
For.
Nat Green.
Against.
Kate Halliday. Nigel Harting. Nick Hignett.
For.
Ruth Houghton.
Against.
Richard Huffer. Vince Hunt.
For.
Kirsty Hurst Knight.
For.
Mike Isherwood.
Against.
Mark Jones. Simon.
For.
Heather Kidd.
Against.
Christian Lee. Hilary Love.
For.
Nigel Lumby.
For.
Robert Macy.
For.
David Minery.
Against.
Dan Morris.
For.
Pam Mosley.
Against.
Against.
Peggy Mullock. Ian Nellins.
For.
Kevin Pardy.
Against.
Viv Parry. Tony Parsons.
Against.
Leslie Picton.
For.
Ed Potter.
For.
Chris Schofield. Andrew Sherrington.
Against.
Dan Thomas. Robert Tyndall.
For.
Kevin Turley.
Against.
David Vasmer.
Against.
Alex Wagner.
Against.
Claire Wilde. Brian Williams.
For.
Mark Williams.
Against.
Rob Wilson.
Against.
Paul Wynne.
For.
Thank you.
Just while we're waiting for the recorded vote to be calculated, just thank you to Tracy Cansdale. So it's 36 for the recommendation of the portfolio holder. No action at present, and 30 against. So the portfolio holders recommend. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the constitution of committees and allocation of seats to political groups. I move that the report and recommendations of the Assistant Director Legal and Governance be received and agreed.
I second that.
Okay, I think we can probably move straight to the vote. I can't see any hands waving around. Roger, you sure?
I'm in support.
I'm in shock. All right. So, all those in favour of abstentions, unanimous. Thank you, members. Okay, we will move on to item 8, which is the scheme of delegation. I move the responsibility for functions as set out in Part 3 of the Constitution and the scheme of delegation as set out in Part 8 of the Constitution be approved.
And I second that also.
Okay, all those in favour again, please show. Any against? Abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We will move on to the notices of motion. And the following ones have been received in accordance with procedure rule. We will, as I think I said last year, at some stage be having a look at this because ordinarily on the annual council there would be no questions or motions put, but I have agreed to allow it again this year because it has become a bit of a habit, but it does need to be looked at because it doesn't sit comfortably within the Constitution. So either that needs to be changed or we need to go back to as was. So, the first motion is being received from Councillor Duncan Kerr and is supported by the Green Group. Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, I won't take up a lot of time on this. I think it's a fairly self-evident motion. We know that parishes are responsible for many services in Shropshire. We know that Shropshire Council is having some difficult times. What has been missing, I think, for the last decade or more is a formal agreement, a charter between parishes and Shropshire that can work for the benefit of both parties as a mutual charter between people of equal standing. If such a charter had been in place, then it might have been possible to have started discussions on many of the issues that Shropshire wants to see, and for parishes to start discussions on many of the aspirations they have also. As we have been asked to make it absolutely clear that this charter in no way would envisage the dumping of statutory costs from Shropshire Council onto parishes. Indeed, it is intended to do exactly the opposite and ensure that where more effective ways can be found of working to deliver services, then benefits can be taken of you doing that, and the benefits of the financial benefits on that could be shared between the two authorities. So I think it's worth looking around. It's always worth looking at what other authorities are doing. There seems to be an excellent charter there in front of you for Northumberland. I'm not saying we adopt that charter. I'm just saying we wanted a sort of basis to see what a charter could look like. There's one that's been operating for a number of years. And I'm sure if you speak to officers or indeed parish councils or councillors of Northumberland, they will talk about the benefits and that have been achieved from having that. We are, and I'll make this clear, there's no actual criticism of Shropshire Council's working with a town council. I know most of Oswestry Town Council has worked very well when it's required by government and when some funding's at stake. But when there is no funding at stake or it's not a requirement, then it seems that there is no structure there for those two agencies to work together. But they have many areas where they would mutually benefit from so doing. So I don't think it's very contentious, it's just about how we work together. I'm sure we'd all want to work in a way that embraces the thousands of parish councillors there are in Shropshire, and this charter is a step towards doing it, and I really do hope it's non-contentious and can just be supported and go through.
Thank you. And it is being seconded by?
Julian Dean, seconding and reserving my right to speak.
Okay. Gwilym, Councillor Gwilym Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to, it's Councillor Gwilym Butler, portfolio holder for Finance, Corporate Resources and Communities. What I'd like to do to start with is to bring information to councillors on the journey we have been since we became a unitary authority and what we are doing at the present time working with our town and parish councils. I was actually portfolio holder for communities back in the early days of this council, and at that time we worked very closely with SALC and with town and parish councils to try and deliver a charter for town and parish councils. Unfortunately, it failed because we could not get the universal buy-in of all the town and parishes across the county, however hard we tried, unlike the compact we introduced for the voluntary and community sector at that time. So it failed. And that was at a time when we were actually devolving quite a lot of services to town and parish councils, the first rounds of libraries, public toilets, and all similar things to what situation we are in today. So that was the historic journey. If we look at today, we have an excellent joint working group with SALC. Sitting on that is the executive officers from SALC, and also the clerks from Oswestry, Shrewsbury, some of the other larger towns, and also the small parishes. And it is an excellent working group which Councillor Simon Jones and myself sit on. It is also led with Mark Barrow and Jane Trethui, and we meet on a pretty regular basis, as does the leader and myself meet with SALC and the executive also. Now, part of that group, they have set up, within the last 12 months, a communications working group to put together a terms of reference for town and parish councils to actually work with us moving forward. And it is much more snappier and it is much more easier than a universal charter, which is difficult historically to get engaged from all our 170 odd parish and town councils. But it's also, once you have that charter, it is very difficult to monitor. So on that comms group, we've got our head of comms, Nigel Newman, and representatives from that working group from SALC and a lot of clerks of different sizes of town and parish councils across the county. I've also spoken at length with the officers of SALC, and they agree with me at this time to actually introduce a charter now when we're having to move at a pace would seriously muddy the waters of the work we've got in place and the work we are doing. So where I may agree with the ethos, we haven't got really the time to do this, we've got to move at pace, and I do believe there is an excellent working situation at the moment with SALC and a good measure of all town and parishes across this county. So I would ask members to oppose this motion at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roger Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. I thought I was disappointed by a previous decision of the Council a few minutes ago. I'm disappointed to hear what has just been said by the Cabinet member. I was instrumental in drawing up the original charter that was in existence with the old Shropshire County Council when I was chairman of SALC at the time, and it worked. The Unitary Council was going to draw it up, and for whatever reason, and I didn't know it had failed, it didn't happen. Other local authorities, it does work. And really, if you want to have a partner and treat them as an equal, you need to know what's on the table and how to do it. And that's what the Charter does. As it said, it doesn't impose obligations, but it's trying to work together. This council should learn and work with partners. Because it hasn't worked with partners is one of the reasons why we're £62 million have to be the savings this year, because it has not met the savings and the working that's happened in previous years. Parishes are able to deliver many of the services a lot better, a lot cheaper, a lot more efficiently than Shropshire Council, but it needs a charter to work around it so that all councils, not just the town councils, the smaller ones as well, the linesmen, the lensmen, whatever you want to call it, who can actually go out and do things. There is an environmental maintenance grant that's in situ, but we do need that charter to show that we want, and I'm talking to Shropshire Council wants to treat all other councils as equal partners and have a parameters on which discussions can take place. I would have hoped it would be unanimous to vote, but by the sound of it, it isn't. Really, we do need to sit down and work together. If we're going to continue with Shropshire Council and be masters in our own house, we have to do that. And also, I must also note that I am a member of the SALC Executive and a chairman of a parish council. And as far as I'm concerned, We all want to and need to work together for the benefit of all our citizens, both young, those at school now, and the future ones, the ones who are drawing a pension. All ages, we need to work together. And this charter is important, as has been shown by many other local authorities and was as proposed by the original person who moved the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Leslie Picton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to take very long. Councillor Kerr, I don't disagree with you. I think, you know, parish charter, town and parish council charter would be brilliant. But you said it yourself, at the time when we had the time to do this, you've asked in the motion for this to be done by December. There's already a significant amount of discussion going on between the Town Council, and frankly, I would rather it be action rather than words at the moment. I'd rather the officers were taking the time to talk to the Town and Parish Councils and work with them than actually putting together a charter of words, because that's what it was. And it was made very clear to me by the South Executive that when we did this at the time before, there was a significant number of parish and town councils who would not sign up to it. I don't want to waste time this year. Let's do it next year. You know, let's start again with the new administration. Let's why not? Let's put a new charter in place with the new administration. The officers simply, I genuinely don't think some of you get it, or if you do get it, you're totally ignoring it. The officers are under the most enormous pressure this year, and you want them to come up with a charter when actually they're out there doing this work now. They're already having those conversations. That's why I'm not supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, you reserved your right.
Thank you very much. I think the difficulty that we face here is that constantly we try and bring forward proposals to make this situation workable and easier, and we just get a simple no. Well, back in the budget, we proposed that there should be an asset disposal strategy that looked carefully at what you do with your assets as you go through this cuts process. And effectively, that would have meant working with towns and parishes and all that. And we just got a simple no back, rather than any suggestion about how maybe we could come up with something so that we could protect public services and protect public assets during this £62 million cuts which you're imposing on Shropshire. Now we're coming forward with a proposal to improve the working relationship with towns and parishes, which we know at some times is not ideal. I have plenty of examples from Shrewsbury Town Council, which I'm not going to discuss publicly because we're in current discussions with Shropshire Council as over joint working. But nevertheless, there are plenty of examples. So we've come forward with another proposal, and you've told us, oh, well, maybe in the future, but actually, no, we're just going to vote it down. You haven't proposed an amendment. You haven't come up with an alternative. So rather than just saying no to all these positive proposals, it would have been really nice to have seen perhaps some amendments, perhaps some alternative proposals that were actually trying to work together, in this case, with improving the relationships with towns and parish councils.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, I'm equally sad, really. The idea that we believe in this, but we believed in it yesterday and tomorrow, but not today, is rather an appalling response, I think. What is it about Northumberland that their parish councils and their unitary council can work together and have done so for many years for a charter, but we cannot even try to do that in Shropshire? If we're going to be put off by something that failed once in the past, we might as well go home and give up. Because to get things done in this world, you have to revisit issues, you have to talk to people who disagree with you, and you have to find a way of moving forward. If you do that with openness and respect on both sides, you may be surprised, leader, as to what you can achieve. If you do it with a sort of certain sense of contempt for what others are doing and a certain belief that you've got far more difficult problems than they have, then you can't really be surprised if you don't achieve the benefits of co-working with parish councils. So it seems like this one is going to be kicked down the road again. There will never come a time when it's perfect to do these things. I did say in my motion, it's like planting a tree. You can always put it off. It would have been best done 5 years ago. We didn't do it best 5 years ago. The second best time is to do it now. The worst time is to keep putting these things off and then wondering why relationships get worse and worse and worse in the meantime. And it is not just about communications. It is about having a joint commitment. That is not a communication from Shropshire Council to parishes. That is sitting down and agreeing priorities in our mutual interest of both organisations.
Thank you. Well, there we have it. We've had the debate. We've had the motion presented. All those in favour of supporting the motion, please show. And those against supporting the motion, please show.
Against, 28 for.
35 against and 28 for, so that motion has failed. So we will move on to the second motion, which has also been received from the Green Group, and that is that of Julian Dean. Julian.
Thank you very much. This motion addresses climate action and the relationship we have with the national government, as well as some aspects of what we're doing locally. Do I need to remind you all of the urgency? We are crashing through the 1.5 degrees. We've got frightening levels of warming in oceans, which is the main driver of rising sea levels. And we've got real effects right now here in the UK and indeed in Shropshire, where we've had the wettest 18 months on record, and we are likely to see a decline of possibly 17% in the yields from some of our most important crops in the county. This motion is about addressing the impediments to local climate action, in the context that more than half of the emissions cuts needed in the UK require local action, but also that local action is cheaper. It's half the cost, estimated by the CCC, the Climate Committee. It would be half the cost to deliver the changes we need locally and through partnership working with local action, with local government. So the motion builds on a consensus which actually exists across the Local Government Association, across all the NGOs in this field, including UK 100, to which Shropshire Council belongs, Climate Emergency UK, and many others, who all agree that there's a need to reset the relationship between local government and national government on this issue. Of course, we could say that's true on many other issues, but this motion specifically addresses climate action. And what's the problem with the relationship right now? We know that the funding and regulation situation results in money being wasted on bids which are ultimately not successful, money being wasted on schemes which ultimately do not come to fruition, and money literally cannot be spent because the regulations make it impossible and the timescales make it impossible. So we have a short-termist approach, which is an absolute disaster. Now, of course, and this is the political bit, this is made harder by a ridiculous culture wars attempt to withdraw from attempts to implement net zero, which is a real shame, and actually the recent elections prove actually that people who stand up for climate action do better in elections. And it's also, unfortunately, made harder by, when we look to the future, by Labour's commitment to their mythical fiscal rules, which mean that they've abandoned the 28 billion investment into green spending and the green industrial revolution. But nevertheless, there possibly is a window of opportunity between now and the election, and possibly the 100 days after the election, to reset the relationship. We might not win right now on the money, but we might be able to win on the mechanisms. And that's what this motion is in large addressing. So what we're saying, along with all those other organisations, many of which we belong to, is that we as a council, but also as members of our respective political parties, call on all parties to commit in the future to a reset in the relationship, and specifically to establish a local net zero delivery unit and board, something which has been developed by UK 100 as a way of bringing together the different departments of government and local government. Mandatory reporting framework. Currently we do unofficial reporting through the greenhouse gas tool back to the LGA, but there's no publication, there's no national scheme for this, unlike in Scotland. A climate test applied to all decisions which affect the relationship between national government and local government. And finally, and perhaps this is the tough one for us, is to commit to call for a statutory duty on local government to act on climate, both in terms of mitigation, but also, as importantly, in terms of adaptation. We know, don't we, that only if this duty is statutory will we be able to start pushing harder for the funding. History will not be kind to us if we continue to treat action on the climate as some sort of voluntary add-on, which we do if we have some spare cash. So that's the central part of the motion, but there are also aspects of the motion which my seconder will speak to regarding what we do in Shropshire Council. So I move the motion.
Thank you. And your seconder is?
Councillor Julia Evans. I was to hold my right.
Very good. Thank you. I've had one person indicate thus far, which is Councillor Ian Nellins. Councillor Nellins.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ian Nellins, portfolio holder for climate change, the environment and transport. Julian, thanks very much for bringing this motion. I broadly support this motion, although it does refer to some stuff that is already being done by Shropshire Council. But I believe we should show a willingness to assess, review and ensure continuous improvement. A lot of this does chime with things that the Cabinet has already agreed in principle, or will be asked to agree at the meeting on the 5th of June when we bring the carbon performance monitoring report. The only thing I wish to sort of challenge is, you say in your motion that at present there is no effective publicly visible partnership with public and private sector institutions working together on a green transition for Shropshire. In fact, I'd suggest that Shropshire is already closely involved in several partnerships. For example, the ICS Board for Shropshire, where Shropshire Council continues to contribute to the preparation and delivery of a joint green plan. Zero Carbon Shropshire, where Shropshire Council has been a key supporter both financially and in kind to the work of the community and business organisations working to help deliver a local transition to a low-carbon economy society. And the Marches Forward Partnership, where Shropshire Council is the lead for work on nature, climate and energy. However, even with this, I accept that there is room for improvement and for learning from good practices elsewhere on partnership arrangements, and that's what we should be doing and making it more visible. And it may be worth that we bring this to the specific areas of this focus listed in the motions to be adopted in the agenda for the Standing Climate Task and Finish Group, which was agreed at the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 25th of January this year. I think just to bring some of these things in line, something you mentioned about how things are done statutory across the line. For example, we are one of very few local authorities who actually declare our Scope 3 emissions. There's very few who actually do that, so I think that will be benefit. So, although I don't think there's a requirement for an amendment in this, I think the aim of this is within what we as a council want to achieve with our carbon reduction aim on, and I would encourage people to support this motion. Thank you.
Julia.
Thank you, and thank you to the Greens for bringing forward this motion. In the Labour group, we wholeheartedly support the motion, and we particularly like the spotlight you've brought to the fact that the current KPIs and the Shropshire plan aren't currently measuring our progress on the net zero action, so it would be helpful if that flowed through into your recommendations. One of your recommendations is for group leaders to write to their parties. So I'll be asked as leader of the Labour group to write to my national party to ask them to make these commitments towards devolution to local councils and support towards net zero carbon policies. You may not know this, but I am actually also the parliamentary candidate for Labour in Shrewsbury.
Are you?
Thank you, yes. So, for those of you who are not aware, it means that I do frequently speak with the Shadow Front Bench, at least twice a week, and obviously met with the leader when he chose to visit Shrewsbury. And that's because this is seen as a winnable seat, and therefore I have access to all the front bench. It would, however, be a complete waste of time for me to put pen to paper and write to them to take on these commitments. And that's because Labour's policy commitments go considerably further than everything in your proposal. Our manifesto commitment puts us that we will bring forward a largest devolution to local authority that you have seen for decades across many different policy areas. The one most recently announced was that we would give powers to local authorities to have publicly run bus services, like you may have seen in Manchester under Andy Burnham, something that most residents in Shropshire are desperate for, since half of our routes have been cut by the Conservatives and private councils.
If we could do less of a party political broadcast, please, and stick to the motion, that would be much appreciated by all the members in this chamber.
I agree, Chair. Unfortunately, the motion talks about national policy. And on that, our policy on net zero is to bring forward a nationalised Great British Energy Company that will install renewable energy projects throughout the country to deliver 100% clean and green energy by 2030. That will be done by planning through consent in partnership with the local authorities that wish to have those installations. And the headquarters will be based in Scotland so that we can move that transition out of fossil fuels into renewable energies. So I'm delighted you brought forward these proposals. We support them and we would go considerably further. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Roger Evans first.
Thank you, Chairman. I just note what this motion is asking the Council to do, group leaders and all members. Really, we should be doing this. We should have been doing it when we adopted the climate emergency. If we haven't already done it, we need to do it. So yes, hopefully this will be unanimous and really show that this Council does take the climate emergency seriously. I am concerned about the availability of staff to actually deliver what this council wishes to do and the experience of the staff there. The numbers seem to reduce and reduce, trying to maintain this £62 million problem that we have been landed with because of previous decisions by the council since 2009. But climate emergency, I want my grandchildren to grow up in a world where it is possible to live and to do some of the things that I have had the pleasure in doing during my life. And unless we address it quite urgently and treat it as an emergency, we're not going to do that. And I really worry about the inheritance that we are leaving generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. And it's very kind of you to shoulder the blame for climate change. I'm sure your grandchildren would love to have done the things that you did.
I think we all do, Chairman, of the way that we've treated the world.
I've got Andrew Sherrington here, then I'm going to go back to the seconder because from what I'm hearing, everybody is going to support this motion. So I think we're just kind of talking ourselves round in circles a bit and contributing perhaps to a hole in the ozone layer. However, Andrew Sherrington and then Julia. Andrew.
Got three very quick points to make. The first one is that there is more than one PPC in this room, and I'm sat next to our candidate as well, but I'm not going to take 3 minutes talking about him. The second thing is, a point of order for the Labour Party is that Sir Keir Starmer should be referred to as the dear leader.
Andrew, I'm going to say the same thing to you. I'm not really interested in who calls who. What we are talking about, the motion, I would rather not turn this into now a party political broadcast on behalf of the Liberal Democrats. We all know that there are candidates in this room. We all know that each individual candidate considers themselves to be the best candidate that there is and has ever been, and we will accept that. But if we could speak to the motion, we could perhaps manage to finish by 12 o'clock and get into all the other meetings that we've got to do. So,
from your lips to God's ears, sir.
Thank you.
The last thing is that I have a very good friend who is a smoker and who's been trying to stop smoking for years. And I see these measures akin to providing the nicotine gum and the patches. If it helps us get to where we need to be, then it deserves all of our support. And whichever way we get it done, let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's going to get that. However, Julia, you reserved your right when you seconded.
Very much appreciate all the positive comments and the knowledge around the room, but bear with me here. I wrote this before everybody spoke. And I just want to say, we must not forget our national determined contributions as part of the Paris Accord. We must not forget the Trimageddon events that are happening of climate change, air pollution and the biodiversity crisis. And yet it's becoming white noise. Appreciate that you've all just spoken about it. But I've recently heard climate change scientists have been saying that they're simply holding people's hands whilst we all sink into oblivion because no one is acting fast enough. We've just seen our warmest April. It might not have felt it, but it actually was. And sea temperatures around Britain are breaking records every day in a disastrous way. In the UK, according to Professor Piers Forster, interim chair of the Climate Change Committee, we are way off the 2030 net zero track. But I'd like to focus on the parts of the motion that we are doing, I'm not doing in Shropshire. The Climate Change Emergency UK scorecard for Shropshire schools the council at a 0 against the wide range of headings, including having no housing retrofit target, not enabling local people to buy cheaper renewable energy, not decarbonising its own transport fleet, not looking for innovative finance options for climate action. The ability of councillors and the public to hold the council to account on climate action is far too limited and getting worse. A promised task and finish group now on hold. The Shropshire Plan key performance indicators include no targets on the three big areas: renewable energy generation, decarbonising homes and buildings, and decarbonising transport. We need measurable KPIs on retrofitting our housing stock, retrofitting council buildings, developing local renewable energy generation, transport modal shift, enabling and measuring the uptake of public transport and active travel options instead of private car use. And this would all fit into a sustainable management plan that can be shared and monitored. Whilst there's occasional meetings of small stakeholder groups, in reality is no visible accountable partnership with the important institutions in the county who would help drive climate change action together. We should be convening regular top-level collaboration between the NHS, the social housing providers, the transport sector, schools and colleges, the supermarkets, the football club, many of whom have active sustainability management plans, but all acting in isolation. Collaboration is the key to a sustainable future. Finally, whilst the council is clearly in a financial hole, many places are being innovative in raising capital for climate action initiatives by setting aside developer contributions specifically for this work and by raising money from the community in the form of municipal bonds with a guaranteed return. So I urge you to support the motion, both because it calls on national political leaders to sort out the relationship between councils and Whitehall to accelerate action, and because we need to put our own house in order when it comes to raising finance, to measuring and reporting on success, and to leading the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there we have it. There's the motion in front. If you wish to sum up, I thought it was fairly thorough and everybody is supporting it. However, please do sum up. But
thank you very much. I won't go on for ages, but I will. There are some points I need to make. First of all, can I thank Councillor Nellins for supporting the motion and for also accepting that there are things that we can do better, which I'm afraid on this occasion stands in some contrast to the, I'm afraid, arrogance of the leader of the Labour group, who, despite having just taken in a horrible right wing into their party, suggests that there is no need for any sort of debate within the Labour Party on these issues, and that therefore she doesn't need to write a letter to her leader. I think that's rather remarkable. You have turned your back on the 28 million investment. You have a history of not actually decentralising to local government, but just like the Conservatives of, in effect, centralising.
Can I just say this is for summing up. This is a council meeting, not a hustings.
And I am standing up for local government on behalf of us all, actually, because every single party across the LGA recognises that the national parties do not actually take seriously devolution. What they call devolution, by and large, means reorganisation, so that they only have to talk to one person rather than talk to actually elected members across the country representing different communities. We need a reset of that relationship, both on climate but on many other things as well. And to suggest that Labour have got this all sorted and will come with a perfect plan for local government is frankly a joke, and I think we all know it.
No, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Done it? Good. Okay. All those who are going to support the motion, please show. Any against? Abstentions? Unanimous. As I think we thought it was going to be. Good. Thank you, Julian. We have item 12, which is questions from members. 6-member questions are allowed in accordance with Procedure Rule 15. However, we've just had the one. The question has been received from Councillor Dartnell. Councillor Dartnell, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Picton for the response, and just like to ask if we expect, if group leaders are all in accordance, that this will be in place in July for the next meeting.
I think it might require a change to the Constitution, so it would have to be agreed at the next meeting, if you get my drift. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Item 13 is the dates of the next council meetings for 24-25. I move that the dates for these meetings that the council has set out on the agenda be approved.
I second that motion.
All those in favour, please show. Good. I take it there's nobody against or whatever, so yeah, the meetings will be going ahead, so you just won't be there. Okay. And with that, again, thank you for most of you voting to re-elect me as chairman. I do agree that although my role is civic, it does have political connotations. I am delighted to be finishing out my 4-year stint of this, and thank you to colleagues for supporting that. With that, I will close the meeting, but please don't disappear, because we have to have now the usual hokey-cokey of people bobbing up and down to appoint different committees, chairs and vice chairs. Who's doing that? Tim?
Yeah.
Right, over to Tim, and I will switch off and take my chain off, as I'm not chairing this.
So hopefully this will be a bit more familiar to you now. This is the... I'm not worried about that. So hopefully this will be relatively familiar to you now. We'll go through each of the committees in turn. I will call for... I will read out the list of members. I'll also make reference to substitutes if there are any apologies. And then we need to go through the election of chair and vice chair. Sorry to keep you this little longer, but it is extremely helpful for officers to have the appointments of chair and vice chair sorted before the first meeting. So please bear with us. So the first, we go through scrutiny committees first. First on the agenda is Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. If each member could, when I call their name out, please stand, if they're able to stand. And then I'll go to the apologies and the substitutes. So Health, Overview and Scrutiny Committee, those members that we've been told have been put forward for this committee are Councillors Anderson, Bardsley, Bentinck, Dakin, Elner, Tracy Huffer, Kidd, Pam Mosley, Mullock, Potter and Towers. Now, we've got apologies from Tracy Huffer and Ed Towers, and their substitutes are Ruth Houghton and David Minery. I think it's just left. So if you could all stand, please. And could I please have nominations for chair of that committee? And is that seconded, please? Gerald. Are there any other nominations for chair of that committee? And is that seconded, please? Thank you. So could I please have votes for Councillor Elmer becoming chairman of this committee? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6. And votes for Councillor Bentinck. 2, 3, 4. So Councillor Elmer, you are now the chair of this committee. Please could you run the appointment of the vice chair for this committee?
For the honour of being the chairman, which I am willing to accept. I would like to now ask for nominations for the vice chair. Councillor Bentinck has put his hand up. I was going to say exactly the same. I would like to second that nomination because you beat me to it. Any other nominations for Vice Chair? Do we need to vote on that then?
No.
All those in favour of Heather Kidd? Thank you very much indeed, and congratulations, Heather.
Next, we move to the Transformation and Improvement Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I think all councillors are in attendance. They are councillors Barrow, Biggins, Dartnell, Roger Evans, Gittings, Mullock, Parsons, Sherrington, Thomas, Tyndall and Wilde. So nominations for chair, please. And seconded.
I'll second. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other nominations?
Andrew Sherrington.
So votes please for Councillor Wilde. Second. One, two, three, four, five, 6, 7. I'm sorry, Roger, I should have asked for a seconder. So the votes for Councillor Sherrington. 1, 2, 3, 4. So Councillor Wilde, you were elected as chair. Please take the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. Now I would like to seek nominations for the Vice Chair, and from the Chair I nominate Joyce Barrow. Can I have a seconder, please? Oh, Robert. Are there any more nominations for Vice Chair?
Nominate Andrew Sherrington.
Thank you. Have you got a seconder? Okay. So can I have votes for Joyce Barrow, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Thank you. And votes for Councillor Sherrington? 4. So Joyce Barrow is Vice Chair. Thank you.
Next, we have Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Following councillors, I think all in attendance, councillors Barrow, Burchett, Connolly, Davenport, Dean, Roger Evans, Hignett, Alan Mosley, Potter, Wilson and Wynne. I please have nominations for the chair of that committee.
I propose Joyce Barrow.
Seconded? Please.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other nominations?
Propose Rob Wilson.
Thank you. Votes for Joyce Barrow, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And for Councillor Wilson. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, Councillor Barrow, you are chair of that committee.
Thank you. We now move on to the appointment of Vice Chair. I'd like to appoint Councillor Steve Davenport. Sorry, what have I done? Oh, sorry. So sorry. Yes, apologies. Apologies.
And seconded?
Yeah, thank you. Do I have any other nominations?
Councillor Rob Wilson.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Davenport? I never asked, sorry. Thank you. Councillor Wynne. Can we vote those in favour of Councillor Davenport? Thank you. And those in favour of Councillor Wynne? Sorry, I lost the plot.
They're over there.
Yes, Rob. Yeah. I've forgotten your second name, sorry. Wilson, yeah. I've definitely lost the plot. Okay, Councillor Davenport, you are Vice Chair.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Totally lost the plot.
I'll get a
there.
coffee now. People Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Nominated members are Councillors Allcroft, Anderson, Broomhall, Green, Houghton, Kerr, Luff, Mullock, Hardy, Parry and Wilde. So nominations for chair, please.
I'd like to nominate Peggy Mullock, please.
And is that seconded?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other nominations?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Ruth House.
Thank you. And is that seconded? Thank you. So, votes for Councillor Mullock, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And for Councillor Houghton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, Councillor Mullock, you are now in the chair of that committee.
Can you put your mic on, Kate?
Sorry.
Sorry. No apologies for absence, so from the chair I'd like to...
Chairman, there is an apology, and that is Councillor Parry, and of course Councillor Mark Williams is substituting. I know you didn't read it out, but it is
Oh, I'm
there.
sorry, I didn't see that. I do apologise, Councillor Evans. So the next item is the appointment of Vice Chair, and I would like to propose Councillor Claire Wilde. Seconder. Can we have a seconder, please? Sorry, Rob. Any other nominations?
Yes, I'd like to propose Ruth House.
Seconder. It's the voice in the echo, isn't it? Okay. Oh, sorry, vote, please. Votes for Claire Wilde? Votes for Ruth Houghton? I'm listening to you, not listening to me. Claire Wilde is Vice Chairman. Thank you.
We move to Audit Committee. Councillors Roger Evans, Halliday, Harris, Lumby and Brown-Williams. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Harris and is being substituted for by Councillor Wilde. So, nominations for Chair of Audit Committee, please.
I can propose Brian Williams.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take some time to count this too.
So, and is that seconded? So, votes for Councillor Williams. 1, 2. And for Councillor Evans. 2. So, now the chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to the appointment of the Vice Chairman of the Audit Committee, and I would like to nominate, in his absence, Simon Harris. I nominate Simon Harris. Can I have a seconder, please? I'd love the seconds. All those in favour? Right. So, who?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Evans.
Right, and now I've got to count these. All those. I think we can take it that there are 3 in favour of Simon Harris. Is that so? Right. And 2 in favour of Roger Evans. So I think 3 is a greater number than 2, and I therefore declare that Simon Harris is the Vice Chairman of the Audit Committee. Thank you. All.
So we're halfway through. Next is Strategic Licensing Committee. There are some apologies. Councillors Allcroft, Anderson, Broomall, Birchett, Davis, David Evans, Richard Huffer, Simon Jones, Kerr, Lee, Lumby, Pam Mosley, Pardy, Harry and Towers. Apologies from Ed Towers. Councillor Minery was substituting for him. So, please can I have nominations for Chair of Strategic Licensing Committee?
I'd like to nominate...
Chairman, is there an apology for Viv Parry? I thought there was.
There is, and Heather's standing up.
And Heather's standing up, right, yes. Yeah. So,
I'd like to nominate Roy Aldcroft. I'll second that.
thank you. Any other nominations? No? Well, Councillor Aldcroft, you're in the chair.
Thank you. Nominations for Vice Chair, and from the Chair, I would like to nominate Nigel Lumby. Are there any other nominations? We go to the votes. Those for Nigel Lumby. Those for Mary Davis. 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, forgot to count.
It's 7-6. Okay, so next is Standards Committee. Councillors Barrow, Carroll, Connolly, David Evans, Hartin, Morris, Sherrington, Towers and Brian Williams. We have apologies from Councillor Towers, and Councillor Minery was meant to be substituting for him.
I'm substituting for Dean Carroll. Sorry, you haven't got that up on the board.
Thank you. Thanks. So, nominations, please, for Chair of Standards.
I'd like to nominate Councillor David Evans.
I'd like to second.
Thank you.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Sheridan.
Thank you. Thank you. So, votes, please, for Councillor Evans. 2, 3, 4. And for Councillor Sherrington. 1, 2, 3. So, Councillor Evans, you're now in the chair.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate a vice chair, and I'd like to vote Joyce Barrett, please, as my vice chair.
I'll call the second.
I'd like to nominate Vice Chair, Councillor Sheridan.
Could we have the vote name, please, for Joyce Barrett?
Yeah.
Vote for vice chair, the opposition, please. Thank you. Joyce is carried as your vote. Thank you.
Southern Planning Committee, Councillors Bagnall, Boddington, David Evans, Hignett, Richard Huffer, Lee, Luff, Lumby, Parsons, Potter and Tyndall.
I'd like to nominate Councillor David Evans as chair, please. I'll second.
Any other nominations? No? Okay, so David, you're in the chair.
Thank you. Nomination for vice chair of the South Planning Committee, I'd like to nominate Nick Hignett, please.
I'd like to nominate Tony Parsons.
Welcome, second, Nick Hignett.
Second for Tony Parsons. Okay, we have the vote for Nick Hignett, please. And the vote for Tony Parsons. Nick Hignett is vice chair. Thank you very much.
Nearly then. Northern Planning Committee, Councillors Barrow, Birchett, Clark, Charmley, Dean, Elner, Roger Evans, Green, Hunt, Wagner and Wynne. I think there are any apologies. So please can I have nominations for Chair of the Northern Planning Committee?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Paul Wynne.
proposed, Nat Green.
Thank you very much. So votes please for Councillor Wynne. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And for Councillor Green. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Councillor Wynne, you are now in the chair.
Thank you for that. Right, I'd like to propose for my Vice Chairman, Vince Hunt. Do I have a seconder, please? Second. Thank you, Gary. Have I got any other nominations?
Councillor Nat Green.
Thank you. So, do I have a second for that? Thank you, Alex. So, right, we'll vote for Vince Hunt first. Please show. And for Alex, please. No, Nat Green, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
It's 6-5.
Pardon?
6-5.
6-5, thank you. Thank you very much.
I did.
And finally, the Housing Supervisory Board. Councillors Anderson, Birchett, Dartnell, Dean, Roger Evans, Houghton, Hunt, Simon Jones and Thomas. So, nominations for Chair of the Housing Supervisory Board, please.
And on that, Councillor Vincent, please.
Thank you.
Councillor Ruth Houghton.
Thank you. Votes for Councillor Hunt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And votes for Councillor Houghton. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're in the chair.
And from the chair, I am looking for a nomination for Vice Chair, and I'm going to nominate Gary Bird.
Councillor Ruth Houghton.
And thank you very much, members, for doing that.